Betty. Betty, can you pray for us? Yes, Betty? Betty?
Yes, oh,
Can you pray for us?
loving Father, we thank you for the gift of life. We thank you for everything you have done for us. But all in all, help us in this subject so that we can catch up with everything we are going to learn. In Jesus' name I pray.
Amen. Thank you, Betty.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. So, you are all welcome to today's lesson. And we are going to add on where we stopped last time. Those who are present. We looked at King David and his proposal of building God's temple. We first looked at David, how he transferred the ark to Jerusalem. And then we looked at how he had a proposal of building God's temple. But when we read from the Bible, we found out that God stopped him from building the temple. And instead, he told him through Prophet Nathan that his son was the one who was going to build the temple. And members, I'm sure you still remember, as we are reading the Bible, we also found that God promised David many things. So I want to ask you, members, what promises did God give to David as he was preparing to build the temple? What did God tell him through Prophet Nathan? What did God tell him? If I can see members who were present the other time. I'm sure we read from the Bible that God gave a message to King David. And in that message, there were some promises. So, members who were there last time, what promises did God give to David? Or what did he tell him about how the temple was going to be built? Members who were there, what did God tell King David? Let me see. What promises did God give King David in as far as building the temple is concerned? Did King David build the temple? Was it because he failed to get money? Was it because he had not planned? What happened to the temple? Yes, Bridget. Bridget?
Yes. Yes,
Yes. Yes.
Madam. God
Yes.
promised King David that every king come from David's family be the last king forever.
Come again, Bridget.
God promised King David that every future king of Israel would come from David's family and David's kingdom would last forever.
Very good. He promised him that every king to rule Israel will be from his line and that his dynasty will last forever. Very good. Yes, let me see other people who were here. Yes, Immaculate. Immaculate?
God emphasized in his commitment to protect David and Israel.
Exactly. He promised him protection. That is great. Yes, David wanted to build the temple, but God said no. And he promised him all those things you are telling me, that every ruler of Israel was going to come through his line and that their kingdom would last forever. What else? I remember we read the Bible, and I also told you that you should always carry your Bibles. I'm sure you have them. Yes, let me see. What else did God tell David? Members, I can see very many people, and they were there. Tracy, can you at least give us one promise that God made to King David, as King David prepared to build a temple for the Lord? Yes? People, can you hear me? I'm asking that what promises did God give to King David through Prophet Nathan? We read from the Bible. One is that his dynasty was to, Immaculate, your hand was up. Immaculate, do you have a point? Yes, Immaculate. Immaculate, you were there last time.
David will succeed by his own legitimate son, will be succeeded by his own legitimate son, Solomon.
Very good. That his son Solomon was going to take over, and that Solomon was the one to build the temple. That is all I wanted. That Solomon was the one to build the temple. Thank you very much. That is what we covered last time, that David tried to build a temple for the Lord, but he gave in another suggestion and told David that his son was the one to build a temple, and the name of the son was Solomon. So today, I want us to look at David's sins. David was a great king. Remember, we talked about his attributes, but he had problems. He brought the ark. He wanted to build a temple for the Lord, but he had the other side. So today, I want us to look at David's sins. And these ones are recorded in 2 Samuel chapter 11, starting from verse 1 to 27. So David, as a king, he had problems and he committed sins. So when you read there in 2 Samuel, we look at David as a sinful king, the one who liked God, who danced for the Lord, who did everything, but then he committed sins. And today, I want us to look at those sins that were committed by King David. So the first thing that David did is that he committed a sin of adultery. As if that one was not enough, he again committed the sin of murder. So those two sins made David to lose his track as a good king of Israel. How did he do this? I want us, before we read what I've displayed on the screen, I want us to refer to the Bible and read about these two sins I have mentioned. Members, I told you if you want to pass CRE, the only solution is to read Samuel, 2 Samuel. I requested you kind of always carry your Bibles. How many people have Bibles? By show of hands. Where you are? Let me see. Yes, I can see Immaculate. I can see Dorcas. Yes, those people are going to pass CRE. Joseph Second. What about others? Get Bibles, because we want always to refer to the Bible. So I want you to open with me 2 Samuel chapter starting with verse 1. We want to look at those sins that David committed, because David was a great king of Israel, but he committed sins. And we are saying he committed 2 sins. One was adultery, and second one, sin of murder. So who can read for us? Who can read for us? Yes, let me see. Who can read for us? We want to see how David committed. Yes, Bridget. Bridget?
Second Samuel, yes, 2 Samuel chapter 11, verse 1 to 27.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
In the spring of the year, the time when kings go out to battle, David sent Joab and his servants with him and all Israel. And they ravaged the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah, but David remained at Jerusalem. It happened late one afternoon when David arose from his couch and was walking on the roof of the king's house, that he saw from the roof a woman bathing, and the woman was very beautiful. And David sent and inquired about the woman. And one said, "Is not this Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite?" So David sent messengers and took her, and she came to him, and he lay with her. Now she had been purifying herself from her uncleanliness. Then she returned to her house, and the woman conceived, and she sent and told David, "I'm pregnant." So
You can
David
stop
sent.
there. You first stop there.
Okay.
Members, I want us to look at the first sin that David committed. We said that the first sin that David committed in 2 Samuel chapter 11 is adultery. So he committed the sin of adultery. I want to see if people were following. Let me see. Whom did David commit that sin with? Members, from what she has read for us, from the verses they have read, whom did David commit that sin with? Let me see by show of hands. Who made David commit that sin? Yes, yes, Joanita. Joanita?
Bathsheba.
Yes, we have heard that David committed adultery with Bathsheba. Bathsheba was, let me see, who was the husband of Bathsheba? Was Bathsheba married or what? Let me see if people were following what they were reading. Yes, Immaculate. Who was the husband?
Uriah.
Come again? Uriah. So, from what they have read, we have heard that David was supposed to be at war. Other Israelites had gone for war with the Ammonites. But instead of David going for war, he remained at home and instead sent Joab. So Joab was the one in charge of the army. So David remained at home while other Israelites were at war. And from what they have read, they have said that one day in the afternoon, as David was just relaxing on top of his house, then he saw a very beautiful woman, and that woman was Bathsheba. So when he saw Bathsheba, he called his soldiers and sent for her. he fell in love with Bathsheba. Therefore, David sent for her and he had intercourse with Bathsheba. That is when he committed the sin of adultery. But when you read from what I have displayed, we have said that David committed a sin of adultery. Then that one was followed by the sin of murder. So we are saying that he was supposed to be at war with his soldiers, but instead he sent his commanding officer, Joab, to fight the Ammonites. Deciding to remain at home, King David broke the holy laws of wars, whereby nobody was supposed to have sex when Israel was at war. Members, that is what he committed. Everyone was supposed to be at war. Even King David was supposed to be at war. So the first mistake he made was to remain at home, relaxed, when other Israelites were at war. Then when he was at home one evening, this is when he saw a woman bathe, and according to the Bible, the woman was too beautiful. So David first committed that blunder of remaining at home while others were at war. And because he remained at home, that is what made him see that beautiful woman called Bathsheba. And we have heard that David admired the woman and sent for her by his soldiers. Then the soldiers went and brought her. Bathsheba was a wife to Uriah, and Uriah was at war. He was not at home. Members, you must mark that. Uriah was not at home. Uriah had gone for war. Therefore, David committed adultery with Bathsheba, Uriah's wife, resulting into pregnancy. And when David realized that Bathsheba was pregnant, he wanted Uriah to be held responsible. Members, now that is how the second sin is going to come in. After David falling in love with Bathsheba, then Bathsheba was pregnant. And when Bathsheba was pregnant, he sent a message to the king that, my master, look here, I'm pregnant. Therefore, David, in his wisdom, thought that he should plan to bring Uriah, the husband, to Bathsheba, so that he could say that Uriah was the one responsible for the pregnancy. And there I want us to see how the second sin of murder came in. Are we together, members? That is how now David is going to commit the second sin of murder. So when you read from verse 4, I want someone else to read for us from verse 4. Members, we want to see how David committed the second sin of murder. Let me see. Members who can read for us. Yes, Joanita.
Verse 4 says, David sent messengers to fetch her. They brought her to him and he made love to her. She had just finished her monthly ritual of purification. Then she went back home.
Yes.
I end there.
Continue.
Afterwards, she discovered that she was pregnant and sent a message to David to tell him. David then sent a message to Joab Send me Uriah the Hittite. So Joab sent him to David. When Uriah arrived, David asked him if Joab and the troops were well, and how the fighting was going. Then he said to Uriah, "Go home and rest a while." Uriah left, and David sent a present to his home. But Uriah did not go home. Instead, he slept at the palace gate with the king's guards. Should I
Yes.
continue?
Yes.
When
Yes.
David, when David heard that Uriah had not gone home, he asked him, "You have just returned after a long absence. Why didn't you go home?" Uriah
Yes.
answered, "The men of Israel and Judah are away at the war, and the covenant box is with them. My commander
Yes.
Joab and his officers are camping out in the open. How could I go
Yes.
home, eat and drink, and sleep with my wife? By all
Yes.
that's sacred, I swear that I could never do such a thing."
Yes.
I
So David.
continue.
Yes. Yes.
So David said, Then stay here the rest of the day, and tomorrow I'll send you back." So Uriah stayed
Yes.
in Jerusalem that day and the next. David invited him to supper and made him drunk. But again
Yes.
that night, Uriah did not go home. Instead, he
Yes.
slept on his blanket in the palace guard room.
Yes.
The next morning David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it by Uriah. He wrote,
Yes.
"Put Uriah in the front line where the fighting is heaviest, then
Yes.
retreat and let him be killed."
Yes.
So while Joab was besieging that, I don't know how to read that word.
Yes.
So while
Besieging.
Joab besieging the city, he sent
Yes.
Uriah to a place where he knew the enemy was strong.
Yes.
The enemy troops came out of the city and fought Joab's forces. Some of David's officers were killed, and so was Uriah.
You can stop there. Thank you. Thank you very much, Anita. Members, I'm sure you have heard how David committed the sin of murder. Members, we have seen how the story started. It started with David's failure to go for war. This King David was supposed to be at war with other Israelites, but he decided to remain home. And because he remained home, he had to see that beautiful lady, Bathsheba. And therefore, they committed the sin of adultery. They committed the sin of adultery. So after committing the sin of adultery, then Bathsheba was pregnant. And because she was pregnant, David wanted to look for ways and means of making sure that Uriah was the one responsible for that pregnancy. So what he did from the Bible, he wrote a message to Joab to release Uriah. So Joab sent Uriah home. When you read from my screen, I'm saying that David admired the woman and sent for her. We have seen that. He committed adultery with her, and then she was pregnant. When David learned that Bathsheba, Uriah's wife, was pregnant, he called back Uriah from the war so that he may have sex with Bathsheba in order to become responsible for his wife's pregnancy. Calling back Uriah from the war meant that David put the Israel security at risk in order to cover his own sin. Members, I'm sure you have ever had war. I know you have never been at war, but you have ever heard what happens when people go for war. So this King David committed that sin. Instead of helping the Israelites to overcome the enemies, he again sent for Uriah. Therefore, calling back Uriah from the war meant that David was putting the Israelite security at risk. Why? Because he wanted to cover his own sin, and God was not happy with that. Then we have seen how he called Uriah. When Uriah came, he tried to tempt him. You heard what they read from the Bible. Seeking and tempting Uriah to go and sleep with his wife during the time of war. That one, David was making him to go against the Mosaic law. And members, that's why Uriah refused. That's the reason as to why Uriah refused to go home. When she was reading, when David asked to Uriah that I sent you home, why didn't you go? What did Uriah reply? Let me see if people were following. What did Uriah tell King David? King David asked Uriah, why I sent you home and you slept at my gate? What happened? What happened? Why did Uriah refuse to go home? Members, he was sent to his home, but he refused. Yes, Betty. Why do you think Uriah refused to go home?
Excuse me, madam. Okay,
Yes.
I just had a question. Yeah, like
Come
I
again?
wanted to ask. I just wanted to ask a question.
Yes.
Like Bathsheba slept with David.
Yes.
But did she just accept, or it was just by force?
She was called and she accepted.
Okay.
She was called and she accepted.
She accepted.
Because what you
Okay.
read from the Bible, they are not telling us that Bathsheba refused. She accepted.
Okay.
Yes. So I'm asking, why do you think when Uriah came and King David instructed him to go to his home, why did Uriah refuse? Yes, Bridget.
Madam,
Bridget?
I think Uriah refused because it was against the Mosaic law, like the laws that were governing Israel, to
Yes.
be at home and have sex, yet the Israelites were at war. It was against their commandments. So I think that's why Uriah refused.
Very good, Bridget. Bridget is saying Uriah refused because it was against the Mosaic law. Uriah told the king, I'm not supposed to be at home eating and rejoicing while my fellow brothers are at war. Very good, Eunice. We have someone called Eunice, and his hand is up. Why do you think Uriah refused to go home, members? We have seen that one. Yes? Betty? Betty Spencer, your hand was up. So in other words, according to Mosaic law, even King David was not supposed to be at home. He was supposed to be with others at war. So in the first place, David acted against the Mosaic law to be at home, enjoying and relaxing, while other Israelites were at war. So when David called Uriah and forced him to go and sleep with his wife, Uriah refused. Members, when you look at my screen, Uriah refused to go home so that he might have sex with his wife, Bathsheba, as David had planned. Out of shame, out of that, we have seen David tried it 2 times, sending Uriah to go and sleep with the wife, but Uriah refused. So out of that shame, because remember, David was a king. And therefore, sending someone or instructing someone to do something and then someone refuses was like he was ashamed. Therefore, out of that, we have heard what David did. David plotted and sent back Uriah to the battlefield. And that is how the second problem of murder came in. Now, first, he has committed adultery. Second, he broke the Mosaic law. And now, this is how he committed murder. So David planned and sent Uriah back to the battlefield with a written instruction. He gave him a letter. And I'm sure when they were reading, you had the instructions that were put in the letter. Let me see those people who were very attentive. What instructions? What did he put in the letter? What did David put in the letter that Uriah carried to Joab? What did he put in the letter? Members, what did they tell us? What did the letter contain? Yes. What was contained in the letter? Joseph? Yes, Joseph? Joseph second.
Okay,
Yes?
good morning, madam.
Morning.
The letter contained instructions to the commander
Yes?
that they should put Uriah at the front line of the battle,
Yes?
and then the Israelites should retreat and Uriah should be killed in battle.
Very good. Very good, very good. Secondly, those were the instructions in the letter. David instructed Joab to put Uriah or to place Uriah in the place of the battle, where the battle was at its height. And therefore instructed Joab that other Israelites should retreat. And you know what happens when you are at war and others retreat. So, in other words, David planned Uriah to be killed. So Uriah carried the letter and took it to Joab. Uriah apologize for that network problem. I want to apologize. I had a problem here, but at least now I'm sure you can hear me. Can you hear me now?
Yes, madam.
Okay. So I was saying that David planned for the death of Uriah, and that is how the sin of murder was committed by David. So when he sent the letter, to Joab, he did exactly what the king told him. So Joab made Uriah to go to the front line, and then other Israelites retreated. So we are saying Job did exactly what he was ordered, and Uriah met his death. So that is how King David killed Uriah. He did not kill him with his hands, but he planned his death. Now, when they were reading, we also saw what happened. After the death of Uriah, David was not shocked at all when a messenger brought him the report that his faithful soldier had been killed. He was not shocked because he was the one behind the killing. This is what happened after the death of Uriah. So when David heard about the news of the death of Uriah, David took on Bathsheba as his wife. Members, David took on Bathsheba as his wife, and they bore him a son. David and Bathsheba produced a son. And this annoyed God. And because David took on Bathsheba, Uriah's wife, and God was not happy with that, because David took Uriah's wife forcefully. You can't say that Uriah handed over his wife to David. No, it was by force. David used his powers as a king. Therefore, God was not happy with him. And that's why we say that David misused his authority as a king. And therefore, he was no longer exemplary as a king to the people of Israel. This is how David lost his goodness in front of God. Remember, before, David was very good. He followed the Mosaic law. He brought back the Ark of the Covenant. He did everything, but here is David. He forcefully took Uriah's wife. And as if that one was not enough, he killed Uriah. And therefore, he misused his authority as a king. And therefore, he was no longer exemplary as a king to the people of Israel. And I want to tell you, God was annoyed with that. He was not happy with David. And in the following lessons, we shall see what happened to David and Bathsheba. So members, that's how Uriah met his death. And those are the two ways how King David committed the sin of adultery and the sin of murder. Members, I want us to continue. And look at how David's social relationship with Bathsheba caused his downfall. How did these two sins of adultery and murder, how did they contribute, or how did they ruin his relationship with God? Members, we have seen what happened. We have seen how David acted before the Lord. And I've told you that God was not happy with David. So in the next exam, they can ask you, examine how David's sexual relationship with Bathsheba caused his downfall. Members, how do you think this one led to his downfall? Let me first see if people are following. We have seen how David committed the two sins. How do you think this relationship could have led to David's downfall? Yes? Yes, Joanita?
Teacher, I'm going to just try.
Yes, Joanita?
I'm going to just try.
Yeah, we are. You try. I like people who try. Yes.
I think
Yes.
David's sexual relationship with Bathsheba made him unclean before God, and it also killed his self-respect.
Exactly.
It made him unexemplary to people.
Very good. That is what I told you. Very good, Joanita. Thanks for the good trial. Joanita is saying that this relationship made David to lose his relationship with God. In other words, before this, David was a very good king, if you can still remember what David did. But because of this sexual relationship, he lost his love with God, and he could not act as an example to other Israelites. Yes, someone is called Logos. Yes. Logos, your hand is up. How did this relationship lead to David's downfall? Yes, Betty. Betty? Someone called Betty, your hand is up. Betty Spencer.
Okay, madam, I'm just trying.
Betty? Yes? Betty, I'm hearing. Can you put up your contribution? Yes. How did David's sexual relationship lead to his downfall? Yes, Betty?
Okay, madam, I'm just trying.
Yes, I like people who try. Yes.
Okay, for me, I think David's relationship with Bathsheba made him to commit adultery. Yet, when we see in the 10 Commandments, when we see in the 10 Commandments, God said that do not commit adultery.
Exactly.
So King David committed adultery.
Very good. Very good, Betty. King David committed adultery. And when you check in the Mosaic law, it was well stated that do not commit adultery. Therefore, David's actions spoiled his relationship with God. Very good. Yes, Joseph. Second Joseph.
Yes, so David showed a bad example to his subjects. For example, the messengers sent to fetch Bathsheba must have had a negative impression towards him.
Very good. Very good. People were following. I'm now impressed. Remember we said that David, after admiring Bathsheba, he sent his what? His messengers to go and call her. So those messengers had like a negative perception about their king. So he lost his respect even from his subjects. Very good, Secondly. What else? What else? Let me see. Let me see other people who are putting up their hands. What else? Secondly, do you want to give us a second point or your hand is still up? I want to pick on this. Yes, Bridget. Bridget?
Madam, I think David gained God's glory for the fact that he was a chosen king for God since way time back, but then we committed adultery and
can you hear me?
ordered for the murder of Uriah.
Yes,
he
Bridget.
therefore broke 2 of the 10 commandments.
You are talking,
so
but we cannot hear you.
God's glory and
yes, Bridget. Bridget has a very good point, but we cannot hear.
Oh, I think.
Yes.
Yes, when King David committed adultery and ordered for the murder of Uriah, he broke 2 of the 10 commandments. So he literally fell short of God's glory and God became angry with him.
Very good. Bridget is saying that because he committed the 2 sins, one of adultery and second of murder, therefore he lost his relationship with God. Yes, Brian's.
I think that by David committing sexual bond with Bathsheba,
yes,
he admired her. Yet it is related in Exodus that do not admire another man's wife.
Wonderful. In the Mosaic law, it is stated clearly that do not admire other people's property, other people's houses, wives, name them. Therefore, he committed that sin and David lost his, he lost respect from his subjects, lost his love from God. Yes. All those ones led to his downfall. Secondly, your hand is still up. Joseph.
Okay, David led his subjects into sin. For example, Joab put Uriah at the war front where he was killed following David's instructions.
Exactly. Second, very good. He's saying that even David made his subjects to fall into sin. For example, he's the one who instructed Joab to put Uriah on the front line. And therefore, God was also not happy with Joab. So in other words, he made Joab commit that sin. Because as an officer, he was not supposed to tell other Israelites to retreat and leave their Pharaoh brother to die. Thank you. Thank you.
Maybe another point.
Yes, who's that? Secondly?
Yes, madam.
Okay.
David did not respect human life.
Yes.
For example, he organized for Uriah's death, which was against the covenant way of life.
Exactly. He did not have respect for human life because he's the one who caused the death of Uriah. Thank you, Secondly. We have Mary. Yes, Mary. Mary? Mary, your hand is up. Mary, you are losing out your chance and you have a very good point put up. Yes.
By killing Uriah, David broke the Mosaic law of love your neighbor as you love yourself.
Exactly. You know, the law is summarized into 2. And one of the 2 is love your neighbor as you love yourself. And from what David did, he did not show any love for the neighbor. He did not show any love for a fellow Israelite, and that was Uriah, because he ordered his death. And two, he took on his wife. So he did not have respect for humanity. Very good. Yes, Daniel. Daniela. 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 Daniela is not talking. Instead, she's laughing. So when you check on my screen, David was supposed to be defending his people, but instead he remained at home idle. That was the first mistake he committed. Then two, David broke the holy war. He broke the holy laws of war because nobody was supposed to have sex when the Israelites were at war. And then David called back Uriah from the war so that he may have sex with Bathsheba. And that was very bad. Then another thing is that David could have forced Bathsheba into having sex with him as a king without her willingness, which was sinful. So the Bible does not show Bathsheba refusing, but inside her, she might have feared the king and therefore accepted. And that was also very bad. Then David thought it was Joab who would have killed Uriah, yet it is him who wrote a letter instructing Joab to put Uriah at the front line. So all these things came as a result of David's relationship with Bathsheba. Having sex with Bathsheba, Uriah's wife, made David an immoral king, yet he was supposed to be more before other Israelites. He lost his glory, he lost his love, and even did not act as a good example to the Israelites. Members, this is how David lost his relationship. This is how David lost out in his rule as a king of Israel. Then lastly, David's act of having sex with Bathsheba was a misuse of his authority as a king, since he used his position for his selfish deeds. And lastly, David was supposed to be exemplary to the Israelites, but having sex with Bathsheba made him an exemplary. Members, if you can still remember, all this that we have talked about is got from 2 Samuel chapter 11, starting from verse 1 to 27. And I've prepared for you just one number as an activity. I want you to try it. I want you to try it. Let me see. If you can read from my screen, we have an activity to try on and see if we have picked what we have learned today. And the number is David's sexual relationship with Bathsheba, that is the activity, made him unpopular. And the statement is in quotes. And the question is, comment. David's sexual relationship with Bathsheba made him unpopular. Made him unpopular. And the question is, comment on that statement. David's sexual relationship made him an unpopular. Comment on that relationship. Members, I want us to stop here and at least give you a chance. Make sure you read that full chapter. Chapter 11, starting from verse 1 to 27. When you read there, you'll be in position to answer that number. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to put the activity in our classroom and even thank you.